Is it possible to bring back a legendary creature that vanished from Earth 10,000 years ago, known only through fossils? Sounds like a sci-fi movie, doesn't it? This week kicked off with jaw-dropping news. Scientists did it. A long-extinct animal is walking among us again. The Ice Age's iconic predator, the dire wolf, is back. At least, that's what the company behind it claims. But rather than bringing these creatures back from extinction, it's more accurate to say a synthetic organism resembling the dire wolf was created. I'll explain why in just a moment, but let's follow the story laid out by Colossal. Born last October, these wolf pups were revealed to the world this week, 6 months later. One is named Remus, the other Romulus. Romulus feels tied to Rome, doesn't it? There's a connection, and I'll explain it in a moment. These two pups looked like dog puppies at birth. At just 15 days old, they took their first steps with tiny paws. By 1 month, unlike dogs, they reached a key milestone in their development. At 1 month, they hit a transition phase. Learning to growl and chew, they left their den and took their first steps into the real world. 3 months later, at the start of 2025, these pups entered their socialization phase. In this critical stage of development, they were weaned from milk. Through play, they sharpened their instincts and strengthened their bond. While playing with deer antlers and branches, their growing teeth and bones became stronger. By the 5th month, a new instinct awakened in the pups. They began to sense hierarchy, challenge each other, and learn the rules of the pack. Though they may seem to be playfully roughhousing, these actions are actually serious preparation for pack life. Let's emphasize this again. These wolves went extinct 10,000 years ago. In a secret 2,000-acre fenced sanctuary, only 2 of these wolves were roaming and playing freely, until now. Scientists have now brought a female wolf into the world, following the 2 male wolves. Her name is Khaleesi, the first female dire wolf saved from extinction. At just 6 months old, these pups have already reached 1.2 meters in length and weigh around 40 kilograms. Can you imagine how massive an adult dire wolf could be? They say they could grow to nearly 2 meters. But how is that possible? How was a species extinct for thousands of years brought back? Or was it truly revived? Are these dire wolves identical to their extinct ancestors? And even more crucially, which other animals will be brought back in the future? In this video, we'll dive into every detail of this incredible story that pushes the boundaries of science. But first, we keep talking about the dire wolf. What exactly is it? How does it differ from the wolves we know? With the Latin name Enochion dirus, these animals are called dire wolves in English. The name literally means terrifying or dreadful wolf, because dire wolves were massive predators that roamed North and South America during the Ice Age. Think of them as the larger, more muscular, and more powerful cousins of the gray wolves that live today but are sadly facing extinction risks. Unlike the wolves we know, dire wolves have broader skulls. With incredibly powerful jaws and much larger teeth, they're true mega-predators. They belong to a lineage quite distinct from today's wolves, so distinct that some scientists classify them as a separate genus. So, if dire wolves were such majestic, even terrifyingly massive creatures, why did they go extinct? As the Ice Age ended, the climate changed, and the massive prey dire wolves hunted, like mammoths and giant bison, vanished. Dire wolves were so specialized in hunting these large animals that when their prey disappeared, they couldn't survive, going extinct around 10,000 years ago. Scientists began the process of bringing dire wolves back by working with fossils thousands of years old. They extracted DNA samples from a 13,000-year-old dire wolf tooth and a 72,000-year-old ear bone. Then, they analyzed this DNA to decode the dire wolf's genetic blueprint. But here's the fascinating part. They didn't directly use the ancient DNA to bring these animals back. Instead, they took the genes of modern wolves and made just 20 small changes across 14 different genes. With just 20 small changes, the dire wolf's massive size, stronger muscles, and broad jaws were recreated. By the way, unlike standard cloning, this wasn't done directly from tissue. Instead, they used special cells, endothelial progenitor cells, derived from blood samples to achieve this cloning. This method is both less invasive, meaning it causes less harm to animals, and has a much higher success rate. Using this edited genetic material, they created 45 embryos through cloning and implanted them into the wombs of surrogate mother dogs. Yes, that's right. These pups' mothers are actually regular domestic dogs. Well, regular, meaning carefully selected, healthy, large breed dogs. They served as surrogate mothers, and the pups were delivered via cesarean section. A 4-person team performed the surgery, while another 4-person team took care of the pups. The pups could only stay with the surrogate mother for a few days. Due to her overly protective behavior, they were quickly switched to bottle feeding. But by 8 weeks, they were weaned from milk entirely. It really gives you chills when you think about it. Considering history, the reason behind these names is spine-tingling. The legendary twin brothers who founded Rome were raised by a she-wolf. The legend goes that Rome was founded by children raised by a wolf. Rome itself represents the foundation of Western civilization. Now, the exact opposite is happening. Humanity is taking those forgotten wolves of the past, raising them, and bringing them back to life. After being born, the pups developed at an astonishing pace, far faster than typical dogs. Even though their mothers, the surrogate mothers, were dogs, they started showing distinct wolf behaviors from a very young age. Their hunting instincts were incredibly strong, even as tiny pups. They've been trying to hunt anything that moves, leaves, insects, you name it. Their caretakers have fed them beef, horse meat, venison, and organ meats like liver. At first, they were given pureed food, but later they moved to chunks and whole pieces. Still, they haven't caught any live prey yet. And by the way, people try to avoid getting too close to the pups. Even the scientists feeding them keep their distance at all times. I don't know which gene they tweaked or how, but it feels like a message from 10,000 years ago has resurfaced within the pups. Don't trust humans. As I mentioned earlier, the scientists who brought them back are keeping their exact location a secret. They've only shared that the pups are in a 2,000-acre area enclosed by 3-meter-high fences. Meanwhile, they're studying whether these pups can survive in the wild. Right at this point, we need to dive into some key details and critical debates behind this thrilling development. Although Colossal claims they've brought back dire wolves and revived an extinct species, and this claim has made huge waves in the media, scientifically, it doesn't quite tell the whole truth. Yes, the technologies used, especially taking cells from blood for cloning and multi-gene editing, are truly groundbreaking. These are promising advancements for future species conservation efforts. However, these creatures aren't exact replicas of the dire wolves that lived 10,000 years ago. The truth is, they're actually animals created by making genetic modifications to the DNA of modern gray wolves to bring out specific traits intended to resemble those of dire wolves. In a way, they're gray wolves that look like dire wolves. As I mentioned before, some key scientific studies show that dire wolves weren't that closely related to gray wolves, having diverged from a much older lineage about 6 million years ago, and possibly being closer to coyotes. While Colossal seems to disagree with this view, they haven't yet shared detailed scientific data to back their claims with the public. In other words, there's no published scientific study. So, as I mentioned at the start of the video, rather than bringing these creatures back from extinction, it's more accurate to say they've created a synthetic organism resembling a dire wolf. In other words, what's being done is less about reviving a past species exactly as it was, and more about designing a new form of life using advanced genetic engineering techniques. So, what's the point of bringing these creatures back? Why do scientists want to revive an animal that disappeared thousands of years ago? The goal isn't just to conduct a cool experiment. It's not about, can we do it? Let's find out. They say this work is a giant step toward protecting living species in the future. Look, every year, hundreds of species go extinct around the world. Our planet's biodiversity is shrinking fast, and it's predicted that by 2050, 30% of this diversity could be gone. By bringing the dire wolf back, scientists aim to use the techniques and methods they've learned to protect other species facing the threat of extinction. Colossal, the company behind this project, says they're using the same methods applied to the dire wolf to try to save the red wolf. They claim this approach could restore lost genetic diversity to species on the brink of extinction. And by the way, there's something even more fascinating. They're not just working on wolves, but on other creatures too. They're tackling far more ambitious projects, one of which is bringing back the giant woolly mammoths that vanished thousands of years ago. They've even created mice carrying mammoth genes for this project. Yes, you heard that right. Woolly mammoths are coming back. They're aiming for 2026. On top of that, bringing back the Tasmanian tiger, which went extinct about 100 years ago, is also on the scientists' agenda. They say the research on these species could play a major role in protecting their endangered relatives. In other words, the return of the dire wolf isn't just a headline-grabbing story. It could be the start of a much bigger saga. But still, we can't help but wonder, can we? Is humanity doing a good thing by bringing these species back? Or is messing with nature a risky move? Now, let's take a closer look at the ethical debates and risks these projects bring. One of the biggest concerns is what might happen if these revived species are released into the wild. In the past, when humans interfered with nature, they often faced a range of unexpected consequences. For example, cane toads were brought to Australia to fight pests, but instead, they started wiping out native animal populations. What if the impact of dire wolves, or, in the future, mammoths on nature turns out to be completely different from what we expect? Plus, these methods come with their own risks. Engineering techniques can cause health issues in animals. According to some experts, many cloned animals face problems like weakened immunity, organ defects, and premature aging. Another ethical concern is about these animals' social needs. After all, they're social creatures too. Dire wolves typically lived in vast territories and large packs, but the pups born today, 2 males and 1 female, just 3 of them, seem destined to live in a protected reserve in small groups. Will that be enough for them? Is this kind of lifestyle suited to their nature? Folks, we're living in such a strange, mind-blowing era. On one hand, we're the ones destroying nature. On the other, we're the ones trying to bring its ancient creatures back to life. These young dire wolves have brought to life something, a sound we've only known from fossils, letting us hear it for the first time in 10,000 years. Hearing that sound, yes, it gives me chills. But maybe the real question isn't whether it's right to bring them back. The real question is, can we make this world we're giving them, a world we're bringing them back into, beautiful enough, safe enough for them to thrive? When we're still so far from achieving that even for humans,